All right, all right, all right. So you guys have to bear with me, okay? Never done a commentary in my life, so this is gonna be probably terrible. I'm not gonna want to watch this back, but I will, and I will upload this to YouTube no matter what. So I'm reviewing college football scoreboard and college football playoff because there's some things people are going to be a little mad about, okay? Especially with what I say. So this is it. I'll just go over the games real quick, the games that matter. Georgia beat Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes. That was a ridiculous game to anybody who watched it, like I did. 8 freaking overtimes is crazy. Boise blew out Oregon State. Not surprising at all. Oregon State's been pretty bad all year. Ole Miss keeps their very slim, and I mean slim, playoff hopes alive against Mississippi State, who happens to be probably the worst team in the SEC this year. Colorado, tried to keep their Big 12 hopes alive. Obviously, it didn't end up mattering because although they blew out Oklahoma State, the only thing that game ended up even mattering for it was Travis Hunter's Heisman, which I think Ashton Jeanty deserves the Heisman because he's a freak of nature. But anyway, moving on. Coming into Saturday, Michigan beat Ohio State. Crazy work. Ohio State's ranked number 2. Michigan was unranked. Michigan has been mid all year, and they come in to they roll up to Columbus, and they beat their rivals on the road, and then they threw down after the game because Ohio State was mad that they just got owned by a 7-5 Michigan team. Anyway, moving on. Staying in the Big Ten, Penn State punched their ticket to the Big Ten title game. Sorry, against Maryland, beating them by a lot of points. You think Maryland was going to make it competitive for a second? They weren't. I was hoping Penn State would lose. That mean Indiana would be in the conference title game, which is what I wanted all along. Did not end up happening. Rest in peace, Indiana. But actually, not rest in peace, Indiana, because they're more than likely going to make college football playoff. Why would they not? They beat Purdue 66-0. They're 11-1. Their only loss is to Ohio State on the road. It's not like they're not gonna. Especially in a 12 team. Like I'd understand if you keep them out of a 4 team, but it's not a 4 team anymore. Get people, so put them in the playoff. It'd be very fun, although they'll probably lose in the first round. Anyway, moving on. SMU blew out Cal because SMU is having the most insane first year of Power 5 football I have ever seen. 11-1, 8-0 in the ACC, ranked in the top 10, and they're playing for the ACC title game against Clemson, who lost to South Carolina, and South Carolina is the main topic of this video. Tennessee beat Vandy. Sad. I was hoping Vandy would win. I feel like a lot of people were. Especially after Vandy got off to that crazy start. They went up 17-7 in the first quarter, or 17-0 in the first quarter, sorry. And then Tennessee just blew them out from there. Anyway, moving on. Syracuse beat Miami. So I live relatively close to Syracuse. I'm a Kansas State football fan. Literally, do not question it. But I live really close to Miami, Syracuse. I'm an idiot. So it was really cool to see Syracuse get a massive upset win, potentially knocking Miami out of the college football playoff because they have literally no quality wins this season. Not to my knowledge. Hold on, let me look this up real quick. Okay, you know what? We'll come back to it later. So yeah, Miami's 10-2. Both of their losses have been to unranked football teams. Although Syracuse has been pretty decent this year. Cal McCord go, but anyway, moving along to another ACC team that lost a game they shouldn't have lost. Clemson, yeah. So South Carolina beat Clemson 17-14 in a slugfest, giving South Carolina a chance to make the CFP. They're going to be the main topic of this video. Talk about them later. The other main topic of this video is going to be Alabama. They beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl to stop Auburn from making it to a bowl. Even though Auburn had like 4 chances to win that game in the fourth quarter, or at least make it close, they lost by 2 scores. Arizona State punched their ticket to the Big 12 title game by beating their rivals Arizona, who was supposed to be good this year. They were not, by 42 points. K-State, my football team, again, literally don't question it, it got kind of like obliterated by Iowa State. If you actually watch the football game, Iowa State owned most of the game. The final score does not reflect how close the game was, because in my opinion at least, I don't think the game was close. K-State got a couple fluke touchdowns. We had like 3 or 4 turnovers. I don't remember. And Iowa State ended up winning, punching their ticket to the Big 12 title game because BYU beat Houston. Not really sure how that tiebreaker works. They're all BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, and Colorado are all 7-2 in Big 12 play. So it's kind of odd. I don't really know how the tiebreaker works. Mizzou beat Arkansas. Literally no one cares. Missouri is still the fact that Missouri is still ranked as over Army is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. UNLV blew out Nevada. Illinois, who was also ranked for some reason, beat Northwestern. Thank God. That would have been really embarrassing if they lost that game. Northwestern has been the bottom feeders of the Big Ten for like 20 years. They've had literally one good season in that time, I think. So that was all the games. I forgot. Memphis, on Thursday, Memphis beat 17th ranked Tulane, virtually eliminating Tulane from playoff contention. And although Tulane's still in the American Conference Championship, even though Memphis has won, I think Memphis has won like 8 straight games or something. Anyway, so starting, I have a graph. Yes, a graph of the current bracket that's been on the screen for the last however much long I've been recording. This is before Texas A&M versus Texas finished. Oh, speaking of which, Texas won that game 17-7. The game was not that close, to be honest. Texas owned that game majority of the time. Literally, their only good win of the season was a road win versus Texas A&M, and everyone else was bad or mid or let's just put it this way: Texas's one loss on the season came against Georgia, and Georgia beat them by 15 points, and they haven't played anyone else. So, yes, Boise State, as you can see, I can't currently see it, but you guys can see it. This is current, so I can't see it at the moment. But Boise State, I believe, would have a first round bye in the playoff, which is insane because Group of 5 teams usually don't. Now I know Boise State is moving to the Power 5. I think either next year or in 2 years when they're trying to revive the Pac-12. But Boise has it looks like, assuming they win their conference title game against UNLV, they will make the college football playoff with a first round bye as a Group of 5 team, which would be pretty crazy. That yes, it is possible, but no one expected it to happen, at all. And if it was going to happen, people didn't expect it to be literally the first year of the 12-team playoffs existence. But here we are. Boise State's probably going to end up finishing, assuming they beat UNLV, is going to end up finishing in the top 10 at the end of the season. Very interesting. Which I think it's personally really cool because I think Boise State is actually a good football team. Obviously their running back is one of the most, probably the best college football running back since Reggie Bush played running back, which is insane because Reggie Bush was absolutely crazy. I know it's kind of crazy for me to say that, but dude, Ashton Jeanty has I don't even know, 2,400 rushing yards. He currently at the time I'm recording this, he is tied for the for the most rushing touchdowns in a single season of college football ever, and he will break that because he still has at least one more game, and assuming he has one touchdown against UNLV, and if they win that game, they have more time against in the playoff, then he'll absolutely break 30 touchdowns on the season, which would be crazy. Now it's a matter of will he break Barry Sanders' single season rushing record, and that's to be determined. Of course, he has way more games than Barry did, but it's still pretty crazy that's going to happen. A lot of people believe that wasn't even possible. So, anyway, that's cool. Georgia. I want to think Georgia's going to drop a rank because they only beat an unranked Georgia Tech team at home in 8 overtimes. I don't see it happening just because like they wouldn't move Tennessee ahead of them. I wouldn't understand like why. I wouldn't. I mean, I guess they could get Ohio State could only go down to 7. That wouldn't shock me, but I don't expect that. Miami's gonna fall way past 7, so I mean I don't really see anyone moving Georgia despite them only winning that game by 2 points in overtime, in eight overtimes. Sorry. It won't be Indiana, although Indiana has a better record and only one conference loss to Ohio State, who is a very good football team and also going to make the college football playoff. Like, in reality, Ohio State would have had to – the only reason why Ohio State could have missed the playoffs is if they lost to Michigan and then went to the Big Ten championship because Indiana and Penn State both would have had to lose and then lose in the Big Ten championship, which is very the scenario of Oregon beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship is very possible. But the scenario of Ohio State making the Big Ten championship despite losing to Michigan is not. So Ohio State will likely be in. They just will not get a bye, which a lot of people thought they might. Penn State, interesting team. If they win, I wonder how the rankings happen if they win. I don't think they're going to beat Oregon. Oregon is a very good football team. And Penn State has proven they still can't beat big teams even in 2024. Because they've only played one good team this year, and it was Ohio State, and they lost. It's kind of like Indiana. The difference between Indiana and Penn State has consistently been good for years, but they've never been able to beat a good team. Indiana has been historically terrible. Actually, I think they have the most losses of all time out of any college football team, and this is like the first time in a really long time they're actually having success in a season. So everyone's sympathizing with them. But looking at Penn State, everyone's just like, oh, same old Penn State, just, beating everyone except for all the good teams they play on their schedule. So I expect them fully to lose the Big Ten championship. And I think Indiana deserves to be there over them. Because I think if Indiana and Penn State played right now, I think Indiana would win. But anyway, moving along. SMU, yes. Very interesting because I think before this week, I would have said if SMU lost in the ACC title, I still think they would have made the playoffs. Now, because Clemson is out of the playoffs, if they don't win the ACC title game, I think if SMU loses to Clemson, I think they're probably out. Interesting, to say the least. I don't know if people were expecting Clemson to lose necessarily. South Carolina has been like white hot since like week 6 or week 7 or whenever they started their 6-game winning streak, which is something I'll discuss further later. But outside of that, don't really matter. Iowa State beating Kansas State. Again, I told you the game wasn't really as close as it seemed. Iowa State is going to play for the Big 12 title. And I don't know, a little secret, I don't like Iowa State because, they're K-State rivals. And again, I'm a K-State fan. Just don't question it, okay? They're big rivals of K-State, but to be honest, I don't really want Arizona State to win the Big 12 title in their first year of being in the conference. That would just be kind of embarrassing for all the Big 12 teams that were in before. So, anyway, moving on. Yes. A dramatic pause there. I'll make sure to edit something about that. So that's pretty much all the important stuff that happened, really. Now, to get to the main focus of this video, I want to talk about Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama, the 15th, 14th, and 13th ranked teams right now. Now, before this week, Clemson would have been the 11th team in. Now, of course, if SMU beat them, if they beat South Carolina and then SMU beat them after in the ACC title game, they probably would have been out anyway. So it would have came down to a college football playoff spot between either like 3 of these football teams. Now, I get, and people will say like on this video, I bet you if I get like Ole Miss or Bama fans in the comments, they're gonna be like, well, actually, Prime, Alabama and Ole Miss both beat South Carolina head-to-head early in the season, so you can't justifiably put South Carolina ahead. Well, except I would beg to differ because South Carolina has won 6 consecutive games. They've blown out pretty much everybody they've played in that time, including blowing out Oklahoma, who Oklahoma blew out Alabama. Might have been a fluke, but 21-point wins speak volumes. You just lost by 3 touchdowns to a team that was not even considered bowl eligible until before that game. So, kind of a bad look. Ole Miss loses to Florida. It was either last week or 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember. But Florida has been really bad this year. And if you look at the games that Ole Miss has lost, it's easy to see why you wouldn't want to put them in the playoffs, because they're so inconsistent. Like, one week they look like world beaters. It's proven when they beat Georgia by 18 points at home. And then the next week, this is literally, you could encapsulate Ole Miss in 2 of their games. They go from 2 weeks ago, they beat Georgia, or it would have been 3 weeks ago, I don't remember. They beat Georgia 28-10 at home, and then next week they turn around and lose by 7 on the road to Florida. And Florida has been one of the bottom feeders of this conference this season, along with Kentucky, even more bottom feeders, who they lost to at home earlier this year, which a lot of people thought that was just going to take them out of the playoffs completely, which obviously didn't end up happening. They ended up getting a big win against Georgia, which plunged them right back in. Their other loss was to LSU on the road in overtime. I get it's a hard environment. And at the time, LSU was ranked number 13. But LSU, looking at them now, they're really not that good of a team either. So, I mean, like, they're 8-4, sure, but, like, that's, if you're Ole Miss, that's a game you have to win. It's the same with Kentucky. Kentucky is 4-8. They have one conference win this season and their one conference win was on the road to Ole Miss. So, and Florida is not much better. Like, they're 7-5. They are 4-4. Like, again, like, mediocre. Florida kind of had a little bit of a hot streak. You could argue Ole Miss, because of the Georgia win and because they blew out South Carolina on the road early in the season, I don't want to put Ole Miss in over Bama or South Carolina. I do not think they're playing good football right now. That is my reasoning. Moving on with that, we have Bama. We'll talk about Bama next. Bama has been kind of similar to Ole Miss in the fact that they've been inconsistent. Like, they've played, like, there's games where they've looked like world beaters. Like, for example, they beat Georgia, also beat Georgia. Both of Georgia's losses are Ole Miss and Alabama. But there's other games, like you see against, like, they either get too overzealous and they just slip up, like against Vandy on the road. Their first loss of the season against a mid-Vanderbilt team, 6-6, 3-5 in conference, which I get for Vandy. 6-6 record is ridiculously good for them, but still, at least the difference between Bama and Ole Miss is Bama has a quality loss. Tennessee is one of their losses. They only lost it on by 7 on the road, and Tennessee is 10-2 and ranked in the top 10 right now. I don't consider Missouri a quality win at all. I don't consider LSU a quality win. They don't have, other than Georgia, they don't have any quality wins. And to make it worse, 2 weeks ago, and I can't forget it, they got blown out on the road at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a team who was 6-6 and 2-6 in conference play this season. So they've been extremely unsuccessful against the SEC as a whole, including South Carolina, who blew them out of the water in the kind of a same setting at Oklahoma. So it's hard for me to want to put Alabama above the next team I'm going to talk about and the last team I'm going to talk about, which is South Carolina, who are coming off of beating their rivals, Clemson, 17-14 on the road. Sorry. So it's a very different environment, because if we're talking like, South Carolina, they were expected to lose to Clemson. They didn't lose to Clemson. Now, the thing that intrigues me about South Carolina is they started their season 3-3. Okay, their first game of the season, they come out, they look really sloppy, they barely get past Old Dominion. Everyone's like, oh, same old South Carolina, going to be bottom feeders in the SEC as always. So then they blow out Kentucky. Kentucky sucks. That doesn't really matter. They lose to LSU by 3. I'm gonna be fair to Ole Miss and Bama because I called LSU not a quality win for Bama, and I called it a bad loss for Ole Miss. So I would call it a bad loss for South Carolina too, because LSU they just turned out to not be that good this season, and it is what it is. Then they would lose. They beat Akron, then they lose back-to-back games to Ole Miss and Alabama. The other two teams we're talking about in this part of the video because they are the two most important parts. With that said, since losing to Bama on the road by 2 points, and yeah, they got blown out by Ole Miss, but that happens. Not their best game, I get it. And at the time, like I said, they weren't their first 6 games. They were not playing great football. They started 3-3. Really, their first 5 games they weren't playing good football because they started 3-2, sure, but everyone they'd beaten was either bad or not even really an opponent like Old Dominion, and they only beat Old Dominion by 4, like I previously said. They lose to LSU by 3, a game they probably shouldn't have lost. They lose to Ole Miss by 24. They get blown out by Ole Miss, which is a big argument. Like I was on Twitter, this Ole Miss fan is arguing why South Carolina should be ahead of them when they beat them head-to-head. This is why I'm arguing on South Carolina's behalf. So since losing to Ole Miss, they've lost 1 game. It was on the road at Tuscaloosa, at Alabama, and they lost by 2 points. In a game where they really could have won, especially, I watched that game live. They recovered an onside kick, and they had a chance to get a field goal, which would have won them the game. And if that happened, this wouldn't even be a discussion because South Carolina would only have 2 losses, and no one would be betting an eye. And if we're not even going to mention the fact there's some horrible reffing in that LSU game. So really, if we're getting down to it, South Carolina should be 11-1 right now and in the SEC championship game. But a couple things have gone wrong. They didn't get a couple of calls, a couple of bad decisions by their quarterback, and they're 9-3. So if, of course, like a couple things go their way, and literally 1 of 2 of the games I was saying, they probably are. This isn't even a discussion right now. With that said, after losing to Bama, they come out and completely blow out Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma by almost 30 points. Then they come home and blow out Texas A&M. And I know right now, after in hindsight, it doesn't look like a great win because Texas A&M's 8-4. They're 5-3 in conference. I get it. But Texas A&M is 8-4. All their losses are to good SEC schools, so it's not a horrible win. But the fact that they beat Texas A&M by 24 points is a great accomplishment. Then they blew out Vandy. Vandy and Oklahoma, these are my 2 biggest arguments as to why Bama should not be ahead of South Carolina in the college football playoff. Bama lost to Vanderbilt and got blown out by Oklahoma. Both of those teams are extremely mediocre. And South Carolina blew out both of them on the road. Same environment. They played them at Oklahoma and they played Vandy at Vandy, both teams. And there's 2 completely different outcomes. Bama lost to both of those teams, and South Carolina blew out both of those teams. That is my biggest argument. And then at the end of it, like, of course, Clemson is always a tough team to play, especially at Clemson, and South Carolina was able to get out of there with a 3-point victory against their rivals, which is a very strong win on their schedule, especially since Clemson is playing for the ACC title. Clemson has always been a powerhouse. Dabo Swinney's a great coach. That is why I believe South Carolina should be the 11th seed in the college football playoff. What do you guys think? I'm willing to hear you guys out in the comments. I know this was a decently long video. I'm trying to get my watch hours up so I can become monetized. That's why I'm posting longer length videos now. Anybody who has found my channel because of shorts. So hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, because if you don't, you're never going to see my long length videos, and it's making me mad. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one whenever I want to do a commentary, a rant about something I care about again. So see ya.